Hello, I'm Azai. Welcome back to Christmas Tina. Just took myself a short break. Nothing too fancy. I was gonna make ice cream, but I remember I was making some overnight oats, so I had that. And also I got some donuts. Man, I love junk food. When it comes to sweets and stuff, I really love Western junk food. Like, cookies, donuts, cheesecakes, you name them. I love all of them. But I'm back. Enough about my addiction to junk food. And let's continue Christmas Tina. About a week later, the sun was shining. The light cloud cover made for a colorful contrast of white and blue. Vast numbers of cicadas cried as if to signal the end of the rainy season. It had truly become summer.
いらっしゃいませ。
Oh, is that Shalong Bao?
はい、ヤムチャセット2つですね。
Damn, they're just adding more and more costumes to these girls. I don't know if they necessarily changed Emmy's dress. I don't think they did. But they did give her a yukata back when she first came to visit. Nice new outfit for Kana though. I'm really liking her new, hairstyle. It's really nice. Emmy was greeting customers enthusiastically despite her age. While Kana was constantly flustered, I was responsible for the kitchen. Together, we ran a sidewalk cafe. We only had a small sign near the entrance. But perhaps due to the location, we were very busy starting from the very first day.
Emmy, 3号茶。
はい、ただ。
Kana,
sorry.
1号点餐。
My
わか
bad.
った。
I was able to say simple things to them without using the notebook. There wasn't much I regularly use, but it was enough. Sakura had gotten us tables, chairs, plates, and cutlery. Also, another stove and a larger fridge.
ねえ、ジン、コーヒーのオーダーなんだけど。
コーヒー？哦，你说咖啡啊？
あ、メニューにないよね、コーヒー。
Apparently, someone had ordered coffee. Not unreasonable, given that we called ourselves a cafe.
没有咖啡。ない。
We were under the open sky, but we weren't really a cafe. For the most part, we offered tea and snacks. After talking with Sakura and realizing we didn't have a real kitchen, we had to settle on dim sum. Oh, baby, I love dim sum. Though I am biased, I love Chinese food in general. Probably second to Japanese food. Kinda surprising, I know, because I am Chinese, but I like Japanese food more. Call it bias from being a weeb, I say. This also meant that our profits were large because of cheap raw materials. Good thing tea and snacks were booming in Japan at the time.
毕竟这地方连小摊的肉包都能卖6块日元呢。
I was confident the dim sum tasted good, and compared to other places, we were still cheap. The area was just that expensive, I thought. However, there was one issue I discovered about an hour after opening up.
あ、すみません。今ちょっと満席でして。
We didn't have nearly enough tables. The usable ground space was surprisingly small as well. Also,
あれ、もう春巻きないんですか？春巻き。
春卷没有了。ない。
I couldn't cook fast enough. I could only keep up with the tea and the apricot jelly desserts. Anything that used oil was time-consuming to make in large numbers on a gas stove. The cost performance, as one would say, was terrible. Maybe we'll have to narrow down the menu even further. Perhaps it would be a start to only sell the combos and no individual items, I thought.
怎么啦？你也来啦？
The cat had started coming more regularly since that night. It seemed to be talking to us, but we didn't speak cat. I was kind of busy, but I wanted to give her a treat later.
总之你就在这待着，当个吉祥物好了。
It was almost as if the cat understood. She began to loiter around the tables.
あー、嘘。猫いる猫。すごいかわいい。
I'd have thought that it would be, they would shoot a cat off because it's a stray. The customers seemed to like it, but if they tried to touch it, the cat ran away. It liked Emmy, but even with Kana and me, it only approached when in a good mood. It would have been nice had it stayed there. A cat would probably attract customers.
なんか人の行列が外にまでできてるよ。
听不懂，写下来，写。
メモ？うん。こんな感じかな。
I looked at the page. It said long line. Apparently, we had a long line of people waiting for a spot.
这就麻烦了。
People were coming faster than we were able to serve them. There were too many people for the available space and the time they stayed. Sakura had warned us about this. If the line stretched out onto the street, she said, the government would complain. In the worst case, they would shut us down.
好吧，很遗憾，今天只能到这儿了。
もう終わりなの？まだ4時過ぎだよ。
说什么都要关门了，終わり。
Isn't that supposed to be upside down? Sorry, we're closed, not closed, sorry, we're. I went to the opening in the fence and put up a sign saying that we were closing. It was a waste of good business. There was already a lot to improve. The first day had been a great success.
虽然问题还不少，但至少起步了。是吗？艾米身体很差吗？
Sakura explained everything to me later. Of course, she didn't know everything either, but it was enough to give me a fair idea. Emmy had a heart condition and her family was having a hard time because of it. Typo, the cost of the surgery would be very high. I heard about it on television too. It wasn't a rare disease. Anna had quit high school for this reason. He needed the money.
干吧。
That referred to both the Sidewalk Cafe and me studying Japanese. Originally, I'd only come to Japan to earn money to retake the university entrance exams. I hadn't intended to actually study Japanese very much.
学一点儿，还是有必要的吧。
I remembered the Azaikyousuke girls from the club. It only seemed polite if I was going to live here for a while. Besides, I wanted to be able to speak with Emmy and Kana. The sun was disappearing in the west and the sky was red. It was the end of a very eventful day for our Sidewalk Cafe. We'd opened at 10 a.m., served customers the whole day, and eventually closed at 4. By the time we had everything cleaned up and sorted out, it was 9 p.m.
ちょっと大変だったね。
We relaxed in front of the rail tracks. The summer heat in Japan was intense. We were completely exhausted.
お姉ちゃん、今日すっごく楽しかったね。そう？エミは元気だね。ポリポリポリポリ。
Are you still eating those pumpkin seeds?
あ、また食べてるし。
Emmy seemed to be in high spirits, but we had to think about our business hours. With just 3 people, perhaps it was best to focus on lunchtime. Anything longer than that was too difficult. We had to think about it, especially since we weren't going to do it just once or twice, but every day.
艾米、康娜，你们过来一下。
あ、うん。呼んだ？はーい。どうしたの、ジン？
I pulled out a cardboard box. It wasn't just any cardboard box. It held our revenue from the day.
刚才数了一下，今天的营业额是34120日元。
I showed them the banknotes. For a first day trial run, that was a good result.
わあ、お金いっぱい。すごいね。
That's probably not, what do you call it? Is that net profit? I don't know. It might be gross profit.
うん。お姉ちゃん、 ちょっと怖いよ。
但是呢，还是要从中扣除必要的经费。
Exactly, there you go. Yeah, it's not net profit yet. The groceries weren't very expensive. The money we had to give to Sakura in return for the appliances was the far bigger sum.
お疲れ。盛況だったよね。あ、さくらさん、いらっしゃい。
Sakura arrived as if summoned. I could see something at her feet. She brought us something.
这难道是保险箱？
おう、これは金庫よ。小さいのだけど必要だと思ってね。
What's a strong box? She'd brought us a little strong box. That was going to be very helpful. We had to probably take the profits to the bank. Ah, I see. But going every day would take a lot of work. We needed a way to store it for a while.
それよりあなたたち、明日の分の食材は大丈夫なの？あ、そういえば、もう全然ないんだった。それじゃあ二人で行ってきなさいよ。ジン？
She wrote it down for me. We were supposed to go out and restock on groceries, it seemed.
帰ってくるまでは留守番してるから安心して。いつもすみません。いいのよ。うちだってうまくいってほしいからね。あ、はい。それじゃあ行こうか。
太晚了，商店就要关门了。
I went to the timesheet to mark myself absent, but stopped.
ねえ、これどうしようか。
这么一说，这还是咱俩第一次同时出门。
Normally, I would have used a dash for my absence. That was pointless for both of us. Of course, we could have added Sakura since she was filling in. But she was also the boss, so that didn't feel right.
哎，算了，没时间了。总之，先出门吧。
It was beginning to grow dark. We rushed towards Yoyogi to buy food supplies. It would have been half an hour by foot if we had walked slowly. A round trip would have been an hour. That's why you should buy bicycles. They're really good. Man, I love biking, okay? The problem was that Harajuku didn't have any stores that sold groceries. There wasn't even a supermarket, much less a butcher or a greengrocer. Man, greengrocer? Who the heck uses that word? I haven't seen that word ever since middle school or something, I think. I think that's very, very uncommon word to see nowadays. And so we were making our way towards the neighboring Yoyogi, even if it was fairly far away. This area also had some cheaper stores, like the one I'd gone to before.
沉不沉啊？
荷物のこと？大丈夫。
We'd finished our grocery shopping. I was carrying a bag in each hand. Anna had a smaller bag. We spoke only a little as we walked home. When the sidewalk was narrow, I walked ahead. When it was wider, we walked side by side. She wasn't using the crutches anymore. When I'd met, she had been hiding them. But now she didn't even need them anymore. We came back onto Takeshita Street. Whatever the time or season, there were people here. There seemed to be quite a few high schoolers around. Maybe the summer holidays were starting soon. They were quite visible. I could see Kana staring at them. They must have been close to her age.
Kana, 有没有想过回学校？
あ、呼んだ？
也不是说现在啊，就说以后艾米身体好了。
Oh, sorry.
ごめん、わからない。
Apparently, pointing at the students wasn't enough. I used the notebook. I tried drawing an upbeat Emmy and Kana wearing a school uniform. I didn't know how to write it down, so I decided to draw.
怎么样？明白了吗？
学校に復学したいかってことだよね。どうなんだろう。
Apparently she understood, but she wasn't sure what to say in response. I was fairly sure she had misgivings about the situation. Everyone would rather have fun at school than having to work.
ジンはどうするの？
你问我？
ジンはまた大学受験するんだよね。大学。
大学？哦，大学生啊。对，要考的。
そっか。やりたいことがあるんだね。私は特に目的もないし、今はエミのことしか考えられないから。
Kana muttered sadly. All I could make out was Goal and Emmy. Probably, I thought, she was more worried about Emmy than about school. It was night. And before we knew it, 11 p.m. had passed. At last, we were done. With cleaning up and sorting everything out for the next day, that is. Based on the experience we gained on this first day, we probably had to cook most of the snacks in advance. Cooking them on the same day was just not feasible.
不好意思啊，让你忙到这么晚。
I mean, that's what happens when you go to a pretty cheap dim sum shop. You have the snacks ready and then you just heat it up. That's pretty common.
シューマイ作るの面白かったよ。
就是形状有那么点不好。
何か言った？
没，你帮大忙了。
Kana had been helping me make shumai for the next day. Emmy had been helping a little too. But she fell asleep quite quickly and we carried her to her futon. I was really tired. And a child like her must have been even more tired than that.
那接下来交给我就行了。
それじゃあ、おやすみ。
好的，辛苦了。就这样吧，我也该睡了。明天还要干活呢。
I muttered, and carried a huge pile of shumai to the fridge. Originally, Emmy and Kana were supposed to only take care of the customers. I was glad they'd agreed to help me with the kitchen too. If I'd had to make all that shumai myself, it would have taken even longer.
累了。
I whispered and pulled my passbook out of my drawer. My account was filling up. I was about halfway towards the target I'd set myself. The job was going to run for a year, I'd been told. About 5 months of that were left. If nothing out of the ordinary happened, I was going to make it to my target, though barely. Opening the sidewalk cafe would make the cushion more comfortable.
因为需要钱吧。
I wasn't talking about myself. I needed money too. But the sisters needed it even more. I wasn't sure how much the cafe was going to make. But I was happy if it helped them even a little. With that in mind, I went back to the kitchen to make more shumai. Damn! I thought you were tired. Management Pro, I thought you failed your exams. We only have a chance to run this business right now. Okay. I don't know what the heck Cypress means. I haven't seen Zhang in quite a bit. I wonder how he thinks of the situation. It was quite sunny early in the morning already. It wasn't even 9 a.m. yet, and the summer heat was already impressive. All three of us had gathered in the hallway. There was also a cat. With everyone on deck, we prepared for opening.
那么，首先要改善昨天出现的问题。
I showed them the menu written on paper along with our expected business hours.
あれ？今日のメニューはこれだけ？
没错，只有2个，而且都是只卖套餐。
シューマイセットと肉まんセット。値段はどちらも500円なんだね。
这样計算更方便。
I'd wanted to narrow down the menu to just those 2 items. I also wanted to make dim sum the main item. I had that idea the day before when we were cleaning. Having fewer items meant we could prepare them in advance. All I had to do during business hours was fry them.
那么大家今天也加油吧。
I don't think you actually fry shumai. Well, you can, but you usually steam them along with the meat buns.
はーい、頑張りましょう。あ、うん。ポリポリポリ。どうぞ、こちらのテーブルでお願いします。あ、はい。ご注文を承ります。
Three groups of customers entered when we opened up. Emi and Kana nervously attended to the customers. It seemed like the day was going to be even more busy.
こんなところでヤムチャ食べれるんだ。
本場の天津となります。
Tenshin. Is that what you call dim sum in Japanese?
すごい。私ちゃんとしたの食べたことない。はい、シューマイセットですね。オーダー A14 番です。
好嘞。
I answered Kana and took the shumai from the steaming basket. A represented the shumai combo. The second part of the order was the number of orders. The last was the table. There was another improvement made based on the previous day. That said, word of mouth had already led to a noticeable uptick in customers. 10 minutes after opening up, we were already full.
热包套餐好了，3号桌。
はいはい、3番だね。
康纳，快结账，别让人等着。
あ、うん、わかった。
说起来你也在。
I'd learned enough Japanese to understand a fair amount, but I didn't speak cat.
小心哦，不要靠近蒸笼。
Whether it understood or not, the cat disappeared towards the tables. I couldn't see much use in the cat, but
見て見て、猫いる猫。
本当だ。人懐っこいな。
apparently, the cat was going to serve as our feel-good mascot. It liked it the previous day too. Hopefully, it was planning to come by more often.
肉まんセットお待たせしました。
ああ、ありがとう。ところでお嬢ちゃん。この店は最近できたみたいだね。
昨日からだよ。
そう。まだ小さいのにお手伝い偉いね。
ありがとうございます。
頑張ってね。
すみません。お冷やもらえますか？はいはい。ただいまただいま。
Around noon was when the most people arrived. The line began to reach outside just after 11 a.m. We managed to keep it moving relatively quickly. I didn't think they had to wait longer than 10 minutes.
这也是全换成套餐的成果。
In 1 hour, we'd burned through all the food we'd prepared. But we managed to keep up afterwards as well. The cooking process was efficient enough now. It was fairly stressful though.
はい今お持ちしてます。お姉ちゃんお会計の人早く。ちょっと待って。
Maybe the biggest problem was the lack of space. We were doing everything between us and only Kana could collect the money. I was busy with the kitchen and couldn't help out. It was also quite hot. When I looked at a thermometer, I was shocked to find it was 36 degrees Celsius. I don't know how hot that is in Fahrenheit. You guys do the calculations. Let me try to see if I can do it in my head. Let's see. 6, 54, about 86, maybe? Yeah, about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know. Could be wrong. Could be like 90. Still, we had to power through, even at the height of summer. We had no shade outside. Kana was already looking very exhausted. Emi still seemed in a good mood, at least, but we had to be careful.
康娜，要不然休息一下？
呼んだ？
是啊，看你累得不轻，休息一会儿吧。
あ、休憩って意味なら大丈夫だよ。ねえ、肉まんセットまだ？はいはい、ただいま。
果然只有2个人忙不过来啊。
We could probably add more tables to make the cafe more profitable. There are also still ways to free up storage space and make more snacks in advance. But there was nothing we could do about the cramped kitchen and the lack of people. Kana was saying she was fine, but she was pushing it.
这才12点半呢。
I looked at my wristwatch. Specifically, it was 12:37. This was probably the most hectic and confusing time of day. We tried to prepare enough to be able to stay open until dusk, but that didn't seem like a good idea.
不如只限定午餐时间营业。
We never intended to stay open the whole day anyway. It was just not possible. The question was how long we could stay open and keep doing it every single day.
行，就这么定了。
I went outside and flipped the sign to mark the cafe closed. The people already in line were the last we were going to serve that day. We'd open at 10 and we were going to close at 2. It was only about 4 hours of business, but this was the most we could manage to keep doing every day. I mean, I think that's fair. Like 4 hours for a restaurant? I don't think a lot of restaurants do 24 hours or even like long business hours, unless you're a very, very big chain. The sky was beginning to darken. The heat, so oppressive around noon, was lifting. I looked at the clock, it was 4 p.m. We'd already been closed for 2 hours, but preparations had to be made for the next day. We were only just finishing those.
就这些吧。
今日もいっぱいシューマイ作ったね。ポリポリポリ。あ、またお姉ちゃんひまわりの種食べてる。無意識だった。
We made a large amount of shumai and meat buns again. We would probably have an easier time the next day. I would be able to help with running the cafe then, and things could operate more smoothly. Of course, the cooking could be done during business hours, but that made helping them with the cafe harder.
それじゃあジン、明日からも10時から1時までが営業時間なんだね。
但是之后要为夏天做准备，要忙到4点。
In the end, we were going to work from 9 to 4. That was about the time limit, the limit of what we could handle keeping up with.
あ、今日の買い出しどうしよう。
采购？哦，今天我一个人去就行。
I made an okay gesture and marked myself absent on a timesheet.
私もついていきたい。ダメよ。先にお風呂入るんだから。それに、今日はお勉強しないとね。はーい、わかりました。
Yeah, Jing probably doesn't have any time to study anymore, does he? There was a reluctance in her voice. Apparently, the cafe wasn't going to keep them from studying at least.
じゃあジン、アイス買ってきて、アイス。
OK。
やったー！アイス楽しみ！あ、ごめんなさい。荷物も多いのに。
Ice cream is pretty small. Doesn't really matter all that much. I had most of what I needed carried in the bags in both hands. That said, groceries weren't all that heavy. This was another advantage of narrowing down the menu.
今天的销售额是23000日元啊。
More than 10,000 yen less than the previous day. But money wasn't the only metric. The previous day would work throughout the whole evening and until 11 p.m. Some ingredients had gone to waste too. Now we were already done with all our preparations. We didn't have to waste much either. It was more efficient and profitable, I thought. A better balance compared to before.
好歹我也算半个专业的嘛。
We were operating on a small scale, but running a cafe was a very useful experience. There was more to it than just working very hard.
哟，小冉，干得挺来劲儿的嘛。
There we go. I haven't seen this guy in quite a bit.
喏、你是
I'd run into Zhang. He was seemingly always in this area.
开店的情况，我听说了。是还好
sorry.
啊，
My
主要
bad, my
是
bad.
地理位置好。哎，是广式茶点选得好，你小子真有眼光。怎么？难不成是在夸我？对，以前我也开过馆子。
What hadn't he worked at? I would have expected him to be involved in nothing but shady business from the start.
那不是饭馆，是风俗店吧？
Oh, fuck you, Jane. At least give the guy some credit.
就是普通的馆子，跟陪酒什么的没关系。再说了，我最开始干的生意就是餐饮。
I hadn't known. Wouldn't have expected it either. He'd been living in Japan for a long time. A mysterious man, certainly.
那你还需要桌子用具什么的吗？你能帮忙准备？当然不是免费的，那倒无所谓。
We had enough money to buy or lend something. Considering the number of people who'd come, more tables made sense. We had more demand than we could serve.
还是算了，我们人手不够。那雇人来打工不就得了？啊？嗨，光雇个厨师也行啊。不，这显然不太好吧？
It was our job to live in that old station building. The sidewalk cafe was a side gig for us.
我自己还在打工呢，再雇打工的人，这我没意见。
That was easy. Well, if the boss agreed, then it was possible.
哎，你现在跟他们开着店，不是因为喜欢他干的吧？你这是话里有话呀。我听说了，你以后想做工商管理相关的工作，算是吧。想去上大学，也是因为这个吧？总之，要是有什么需要，尽管跟我说。
Oh, sorry, Zhang. After the sun had gone down, it suddenly began to rain. It drenched the scorched asphalt and began to cool the sweltering atmosphere. The rain clouds seemed like they were staging a comeback of the rainy season. At that time, I was relaxing in my room.
刚才他的提议，倒是也可以考虑。
Our location was very good. The longer we stayed open, the more money we could make. We didn't have enough people, but we could hire some part-timers.
要是雇到了厨子，晚饭时间也能营业。
We had a permit to stay open until midnight. If we closed at 12, there was still enough time to clean and prepare for the next day. The longer we stayed open and the more tables we had, the more money we could earn in a single day. We weren't going to be able to keep doing it forever anyway. Because all the customers were sitting outside, we were limited to the summertime. That's true.
再说，我这份打工也只到今年年底而已。
That's also true. Afterwards, the building was going to be torn down. We only had this one chance.
需要钱呢。
I whispered again. It was becoming a subconscious thing for me.
这种时候，就应该果断点。
With that decision made, I went back to them. First, I had to talk to Kana.
それじゃエミ、次の問題よ。25×9 は25が9だから180と、あれこういう場合はね、一旦 25×10 って考えるの。それで、
I heard them talking in their room. Apparently, they were studying math.
康娜，我想找你商量个事儿。
あ、うん、どうぞ。どうしたの？ジンも算数お勉強する？
不是学习，是咖啡店的事儿。
I showed them the business plan I'd drawn up. It wasn't all that detailed yet. I had to make it easy for Kana and Sakura to understand. so it'll only contain the most important information.
ジンは店をもっと大きくしたいってことなんだ。
对，扩大。
うん。テーブル数が増えるのはいいよね。
能减少客人的排队时间，也可以让仓位周转率变快。
メニューが昼と夜で違うのもちゃんと意味あったんだね。
I could tell she was amenable to the idea. I don't know what that means, but alright. She didn't have to understand all the technical details. They were my responsibility anyway. I just needed her consent. I could take care of the rest.
でもバイトを雇ってまではどうなんだろう。そこまで本格的じゃなくてもいいよな。それにあのベンチまでなくなるのはちょっと寂しいし。
也就是说，你反対？
反対ってわけじゃないけど、エミの勉強もあるし。
This feels like a spat between, you know, like newlyweds.
但是为了尽早让艾米上学
interesting.，
你需要钱不是吗？
あ、ごめん。ちょっと何言ってるか。
Jing, I think you're putting too much stress into this. Like, you're not the one that's supposed to be making the money. I mean, I get that he is trying to be kind, but you know, when someone doesn't want or doesn't see eye to eye with something, it's not really your choice to make now, is it? Right? She couldn't understand me anymore. I tried to write it and handed it to her. I was learning more about how the Japanese use their characters and could convey more nuance. Sister, surgery, money, pass, school, it said.
ちょっとここでそんな話やめてよ。エミもいるのに。どうかしたお姉ちゃん。うん、なんでもないわよ。それにジンだって大学受験の勉強あるでしょ。
She's exactly right, though. I think Jing is pursuing a different goal at this point.
大学是要考，但这样绝对能赚不少钱。来帮我的忙吧，肯定能赚，絶対。
絶対ってジンだってお店するの初めてだよね。
不，其实我是工商管理专业的。哎呀，你也听不懂。
That's too much, I guess. I wrote it down again. I was confident I could even do it alone, but I still needed her consent.
経営のプロってジンは浪人生なんだよね。
Damn, that stings. That must have sting.
それって
Stung.
まだプロじゃないし、大学受験に失敗したってことだし、ここ改装するならお金もたくさん必要だし、ちょっと不安かも。
I couldn't tell what she was saying exactly, but I mostly got the gist of it. She was worried about my plan mostly. I wasn't a manager yet either. I was just hoping to become one. I dropped out too. That was all true. I'd come up with this idea mostly for their sake, hoping they would like it too. But Chat shot me down.
你需要钱吧？我看呢。
Damn it, don't do this, Jing. Don't do this. I know it's out of goodwill, but don't do this, man.
それはそうなんだけど。
那就赶快治好你妹的病，让她尽早去学校啊！
Damn, that was fast.
ちょっと急にどうしたの？
没错，我是大学漏榜了，但我不是门外汉，我的知识是专业级的。你什么都不用管，照说的做就行了。
Okay, now that's a harsh tone.
もう大きな声出さないでよ。何言ってるかわからないんだから。
而且你根本没有理解，只有现在才能赚到这个钱，只有现在。
ジンもお姉ちゃんも。
I'm not gonna lie though. This sort of mentality or this sort of way of thinking, which is called like opportunistic, is actually how most Chinese people do think. Because my brother is about the same way when it comes to money. And I can't really deny the fact that this sort of way of thinking makes him and his wife argue quite a lot.
何よ、あなたこそ分かってるの？ここ、冬には取り壊されるのよ。今から改装するの不安になって当然じゃないの。
再说了，大学落榜了又不是我的错，下次肯定能考上。
ちょっと、やめてよ、二人とも。エミは黙ってなさい。この人は、以前から自分勝手なとこあったんだから。
Well, there needs to be conflict somehow, right? Conflict does make sense, though. I guess Kana also touched a sore spot in saying that he's not really a manager yet and whatnot. That is a sore spot. When I thought about it realistically, I knew they were not going to make up. Meanwhile, I trembled in the cold next to Tina, waiting for midnight. So the cat's name is Tina? I guess that makes sense why the name of the game is Christmas Tina. I was walking home alone in the rain. I'd been in Omiya for work, and by now it was getting late.
まだみんな起きてるかしら。
I bought ice cream in the hope of giving it to Emmy, but perhaps she was already sleeping. Their sidewalk cafe was going more smoothly than expected. I was trying to support them, and I was hoping it would go well.
あ、重機のレンタル代も安く済みそうだし、儲かるといいわね。
I knew more about Emmy now, too. There wasn't much I could do, but I wanted to help. That was what I thought about as I walked towards the old station.
エミ？
There she was, alone in the darkness. It was raining and she didn't have an umbrella. She was drenched. Something was clearly wrong. I spoke as calmly as possible.
エミ、雨濡れちゃうわよ。さくらさん、何があったの？もう大丈夫だから、お姉さんに教えてくれる？お姉ちゃんたちが喧嘩して。喧嘩？私どうしていいのか。
What the? I understood suddenly. When I saw her crying, I didn't need to know anything else. Kana and Jing must have been arguing about something. Emmy had been caught between them. Not knowing what to do, she had run away. I whispered and gave Emmy my vinyl umbrella. Then I walked over to where they were. While the rain had made the ground slick, and I was worried about slipping, but it didn't take me long.
你也好好听我说话行吗？
もういい加減にしてよ。今のままで十分じゃないの。
I could hear them even in the hallway. Neither could really understand the other, but they were still yelling at each other anyway.
何やってんのよ、あんたたち。え？あ、さくらさん？子供の前でいい大人が喧嘩してんじゃないわよ。
I mean, that's true. I mean, that should be true.
不是，我没。
黙れ、言い訳すんな、この野郎。 さくらさん、落ち着いてください。落ち着け。それはあんたたち二人のことでしょ。はい。ジン、あんたにもわかるようにシンプルに言ってやるわ。喧嘩すんな、子供泣かせるな。
知道了。
そう。じゃあ、あとはあんたたちで決めなさい。
I left the room again. I didn't know why they were fighting. Even if I'd known, they would have to make the decision themselves. But a child wouldn't understand. I couldn't accept it when adults made children sad. I mean, that's fair.
慣れないことするもんじゃないわね。
I whispered as I opened a beer can. It was already starting to get warm.
まずったく、なんで私が説教なんてしなくちゃならないのよ。
Kano was definitely younger, but Jing, it was more or less my age.
よいしょっと。
I plopped myself down on the bench. I was going to get wet in the rain, but I didn't mind.
言いたいことを思いっきり言ったためだろうか。
I drank my warm beer in the rain, but for some reason I felt quite good. I dislike the taste of beer. I looked over and saw a black cat sitting on the bench. I forgot to breathe for a second. I'd come here so often to look for her, but she'd never shown herself to me.
久しぶりだね、ひな。元気そうでよかったよ。
I don't know what the average lifespan of a cat is, but if she was here when she was younger and then it's been like, what, 10 years? Then this cat is probably almost dead or something. I don't know though, like I said, I don't know the average lifespan of a cat. I hadn't seen her in a few years. The last time I've been in the same place.
もう会えないと思ってたけど。
Yes. So many years had passed. I'd been a lot smaller back then. Time for another...
いい加減にしてよ。
Okay, I was gonna say time for another sad backstory, but there you go. We're going strong from the get-go.
お前こそいい加減にしろ。これはチャンスなんだよ。
だからってもう十分じゃないの。
My parents were often fighting. It usually happened when my father came home, late at night. It got worse over time. Originally, they'd gotten along very well.
このままじゃダメなんだ。この子のためにも、お前たちのためにも。
それよりもあなた自身がやりたいんでしょ。
違う、そうじゃない。我原本能比现在做得更成功的。
Wait, he's actually Chinese too? Oh my god, the irony.
もう中国語やめて。わからないのよ。
When the arguments got heated, my father often switched to Chinese. My mother didn't understand Chinese, and it made her even angrier. I never really understood what it was they were fighting over. But I remember how much it hurt to see them fight. I was still in the same room with them, pretending to sleep, and fighting back my tears. I tried to spend as much time as possible around the neighborhood. I was running away. Being in the apartment with them was too difficult.
ティナ、寒くない？ごめんね。ティナまで連れてきちゃって。
There was an old station nearby. It was unoccupied and no longer in use. I used to slip through the fence and play with Tina. This was my place of refuge, my shelter.
お母さんたちまだ喧嘩してるのかな。うん。また仲良くなってほしいね。もうすぐクリスマスだし、きっと大丈夫だよ。
I was talking to Tina. Christmas was a special day. Would it be fine on Christmas, though? I was trying to convince myself of that. When I thought about it realistically, I knew they were not going to make up. Even at the time, being so young, I knew. I just couldn't admit it even to myself because it scared me. It was winter. The day before Christmas.
しおり、今日はずっと家にいてね。
どうしたの？
大切なお話があるの。
あ、
いい子だから、ね。お願いよ。
My mother said and left for her part-time job. I saw her off in the corridor. Something important. I knew what it was already, just from the look in her eyes. So I went to my usual place. She ran away.
ティナ、寒くない？
It was dark outside. The snowfall was growing thicker. Dad was probably coming home soon, but I stayed where I was. She'd wanted me to stay at home. She wanted to tell me something important. I knew what it was.
きっと離婚する気なんだ。
And I would have to pick either my father or my mother. I didn't think they'd let me get away without choosing, but I couldn't choose.
だからここにいた。
Normally, I would have gone home much earlier. I knew I could probably brave the cold until at least 12 a.m. If I stayed away until late, he would probably become worried. Then we wouldn't have to talk about a divorce. Besides, the next day was Christmas. It was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow was special.
きっと明日になればまた仲良くなってくれる。
It was the kind of dumb logic only a child would use. But children are powerless. It's all they have.
ティナ、もうちょっとだから付き合ってね。
I could hear Christmas ramping up in the distance. There was even a sort of countdown. Meanwhile, I trembled in the cold next to Tina, waiting for midnight. Once it was Christmas, everything would be alright. I prayed and waited for midnight.
それじゃあしおり、元気でね。
When I came back and opened the door, that was the first thing that my mother said to me.
お母さん、どこ行くの？
お父さんを頼むわね。
ちょっと、何言ってるのよ。
I knew, of course. I always knew. I just didn't know what to say.
ほらしおり、早くお母さんに挨拶しなさい。
待って、もうクリスマスになったんだよ。ねえ。
ティナ、おいで。それじゃあ、元気でね。
And with that, my mother took Tina and left. That was the last time I spoke to my mother.
あれからもう何年経ったのだろう。もしあの時私が逃げずにいればどうなっていたのだろうか。
Who knows? Perhaps I could have cried and implored them to make up. Perhaps I could have prevented my mother from leaving somehow. I was never able to shake off the feeling that things could have ended differently. And I still regretted it. Tina meowed, as if trying to talk to me. I couldn't understand cats, but it seemed like she was trying to cheer me up.
ティナはいいね。素直に何でも言うて。
I didn't want to lose the old station. So many memories were attached to it, both happy and sad. Not that I would ever be able to say that. I didn't want to admit to it even now.
カンナに偉そうに言ったけど、私もダメだね。
What mean? Why do I have to do something silly on my birthday? On a happy 16th birthday, huh? I mean, it might be too late for your parents, Sakura, but it's not too late for these guys. 2 weeks later, the sun burned and the cicadas cried. It was mid-August. The height of summer was accompanied by the Bon Festival in Harajuku. The area was full of people. I'm guessing the person who made this visual novel knows someone from China or something, because I don't know. I think it's pretty stereotypical to put Chinese in this sort of mindset, but I can't deny the fact that Chinese are opportunistic because it happened to my brother. So, I'm just gonna say that stereotypes might not be necessarily wrong 100% of the time. There's a reason why they're called stereotypes, you know? The area was full of people.
ちょっと、どうして逃げるのよ。
I saw Kana running after the cat.
猫怎么了？
もうすぐ開店だから捕まえようとしてるんだけど。
啊，原来是你想抓它。
She wasn't wrong. The cat was very useful, at least as a mascot to attract customers. I'd also tried to grab it before, but it was too quick for me. It was a friendly enough cat and often approached us, but when we tried to grab it, it ran away.
别管它了，它自己会过来的。
I gestured for her to leave the cat alone. We were quite busy at the time.
いらっしゃいませ。奥3番のテーブルにお願いします。はい、シューマイセット2つですね。ジン、こっちオーダー。A34番。
Okay, so that's how she tried to help, huh? No need for part-time workers if she's gonna help out. But what about her job? What about her own job? What the hell?
明白。
カンナ、こっち頼むわ。私レジやってる。わかった。
I think she's burdening herself with too much. Our little sidewalk cafe was even more busy now. Sakura had come over to help us. In the end, my proposal was rejected. We did put in a few more tables, but we didn't change our active hours, and we didn't hire anyone.
ジン、そろそろ1時だけどどうしよう。
已经这个時間了。
I looked outside. There were still about 10 people lining up and waiting. With the return on our appliances in mind, we probably had to stay open a little longer.
那再过5分钟，把 close 的牌子挂出来。Go。
わかった。5分後だね。
We were used to communicating in this way. If she put up the sign in 5 minutes, we'd be able to close around 2 p.m. We had a way larger fridge now, so storing leftovers was not a problem. Well, both Kana and I had decided not to rely on the money we were making. Ultimately, it had been Emi's idea anyway. We wouldn't have gotten this money otherwise. We'd paid back our rental fees to Sakura, and as long as we kept going, we would pull in a profit of around 400,000 yen.
ちょっとジン、シューマイセットまだなの？
あ、抱歉，久等啊。
こ こっち3番の肉まんも早く。
是是是，马上准备好。
Thinking about it, a lot of people had helped us. Not just Sakura. It was because of all of them that our sidewalk cafe was a success. Exactly, Jing. So it was really like overconfidence that you said that, you know, you're able to do all this stuff alone and whatnot when you were talking to Kana. I think that's also... I don't know, man. Maybe the reason why I like Jing quite a lot is because he reminds me a lot of my big brother. I know, projection and whatnot, you know? But still, I do feel closer to Jing a lot because he probably somewhat reminds me of my big bro. Kind of fits him to a T somewhat.
还有你。
The cat wasn't as useless as one would think. It really pulled in customers. People either called us the Cat Cafe or the Station Cafe because of it.
そういえばこの猫なんて名前なんだろう。
猫就是猫吧？猫。
そういう意味じゃないよ。猫の名前だよ。ティナよ。あ、やっぱりさくらさんが探してた猫だったんですか？まあね。
喂，菜做好了。
じゃあまたね、ティナちゃん。はい、肉まんセットです。
いつもありがとうね。
こちらこそいつもありがとうございます。
この店はお嬢ちゃんたちだけでやってるんだね。
お姉ちゃんとジンとたまにさくらさんも手伝ってくれるよ。
偉いね。あ、お嬢ちゃんキャンディーあげるよ。
嬉しい。
Emmy was talking to someone for a long time. Getting too close to the customers wasn't a good idea. I agree.
ねえねえ、アメちゃんもらっちゃった。
Emmy was in a very good mood. Well, whatever. She was still a kid. The customer was a regular too. Regularism. The sun disappeared in the west after a long day. After 5 p.m., everything around was tinged orange. We closed the cafe and began to clean and prepare for the next day. The other three had grown used to making shumai as well, and our preparations were much smoother. Sakura had come to help as well.
さて、だいたいこんなもんかしら。
够了。さくらさん，真是帮大忙了。
別にいいわよ。レンタル料多めにもらったんだし。ちょっとエイミ、やめなさいって。ダメだよお姉ちゃん、遠慮しちゃ。
Ah, the birthday, right?
怎么了？
Right.
ね、実は今日、お姉ちゃんの誕生日なんだよ。
哦，是吗？
Since she was 15 before, this was her 16th birthday.
だったら、お祝いしないとね。あ、いえ、そんな、悪いですし。ダメだよ。私の誕生日だってお祝いしてくれたんだし。ね。
偶尔也做点烧麦以外的东西吧。
やったー、飲みよ、飲み会よ。
I still have no idea what's with adults and drinking, man. I don't like beer. I mean, sometimes I do drink, but mostly during special occasions. Like, you know, when someone treats me because they want something to get off their chest, but they're too, I guess, too embarrassed without alcohol to tell the story. Because usually whenever I talk with my friends and they would invite me to drink, they would definitely cry at the end of the session. It was night, but the summer heat remained. Only the wind, blowing now and then, managed to cool us off. We gathered under the stars in our closed sidewalk cafe. I made food using leftovers from earlier today. Oh, that's a nice shortcake. Sakura had brought a crate of beer. Emmy had ice cream and Kana had shortcake. It was a merry little birthday party.
お姉ちゃん、誕生日おめでとう。誕生日おめでとう。もう酔っ払ってる。全然ビールくらい何ガロン飲んでも平気。
Yeah, sure, whatever. Yes, she was totally drunk. She liked alcohol, sure, but she didn't handle it very well.
康娜，那个生日快乐。
それはね、誕生日おめでとうって意味なのよ。
そうなんだ。ありがとう。
Sakura had interpreted for us. She'd understood. I was a little embarrassed. But that wasn't a good reason to ignore her birthday.
つーかさ、カンナ、あんたも飲め、シュークラロン。
さくらさん、飲みすぎですよ。
大丈夫、全然これくらい大丈夫だから。
いや、酔っ払いの大丈夫くらい信用ならないものはないよ。
ジン、大丈夫ってのは問題ない、心配いらないって意味だから。
Alright, fine. No problem, I'll agree. I was learning Japanese. That said, looking at Sakura, it did not feel like the word correctly described her.
つうわけで、カンナ、なんかゲして盛り上げろ。
私誕生日の主役だと思うんだけど。
はいはい、カンナちゃんのいいとこ見たいな。
別に特技とか何もないよ。ひまわりの種を割るのすごく早いんだけど。
Everyone can do that, you fool.
地味すぎて却下。次、ジン。
那我让我表演节目？
My name was being called. Maybe they wanted some kind of performance from me.
国破山河在，城春草木深。
What the fuck?
漢文かよ、知ってるよと、中学で習うよ。
好像大家不怎么喜欢啊。
マイケルだよ、マイケル。
Oh god, don't do it!
マイケル啊，好吧，好久没跳了。
Oh god. Okay, fine, do whatever you want, man. I'd also had too much beer and my footing was uncertain. But when I did my Michael Jackson impression, that didn't really matter. What I needed for it was the ability to overcome my sense of shame. And alcohol rather helped with that. I faced Kana and the others.
何が始まるの？
She looked at me expectantly. I began to jump a little to gather momentum. I hope you're not too disappointed, Kana. Then, drunk as I was, I started.
康娜16岁，恭喜！
やめて、怖いって。何それ、ブレイクダンスなの？マイケルすごい！マイケル！
I wasn't sure about Kana, but at least Emi and Sakura were enjoying themselves.
生日快乐！
もういいって、それ覚えたから、それ。
注意看哦，这里膝部的动作很重要。
The beer made it even clumsier than usual. My moonwalking wasn't much different from, well, regular walking. Okay.
じゃないわよ。で、あなたね、妹に変な踊り教えてたのは。
Yes, he did.
好累啊。
Of course. I've been sort of breakdancing. That was exhausting. I could feel the alcohol even more now.
そういえばジン、あんたの誕生日はいつよ？
Christmas.
生日，我不太想说。
何渋ってるのよ。次はウイスキー飲ませるわよ。
是12月25号。
マジで？
所以我才不想说。
キリストかよ、ジーザス・クライシス。
What the fuck is wrong with you, Sakura? Damn, this girl's insane.
何あのね、ジンって12月25日生まれだって。へえ、珍しいね。クリスマス生まれなんだ。そりゃクリスマスに生まれたら誕生日はスルーされるわ。
I guess that's true. But I mean, when you have a girlfriend, I think it's going to be easy to remember, right? Oh, it's autumn now. All right. I think 18.5. There we go. They actually have some sort of DLC in between chapters. Interesting. I guess it might end on the 25th or 30 like I said. I'm guessing 25 though. An awkward Michael Jackson double had made friends with 3 people and a cat. But it's not like everyone is doing well nowadays. But with this though, I think I'm gonna call it an episode. After I can save, there you go. Yeah, they actually start to skip quite a bit in the months and stuff, or you know, they start skipping a couple of days at the start, and then a couple of weeks, and then a couple of months, or 1 month to be exact, not exactly a couple of months. But yeah, which makes me really think that it's gonna be over in about 25 chapters. Well, at the start, I thought it was gonna end in 10 chapters, so color me surprised that this is actually longer than that. So I'm thankful about that. But yeah, this visual novel is really, I don't know. Like I said, I think Jing reminds me quite a lot of my big brother. And it just feels nice seeing him, I guess, in Jing. I know they're not the same person, of course. There's some subtle differences, but I think for the most part, he matches what my brother thinks for a lot of things. But all right, enough about me babbling about my bro. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And tell me if you guys know any Chinese person that are close to you and if they have the same sort of mindset as Jing or not. Because like I said, I think Jing's personality, like the opportunistic personality, is quite common in Chinese people. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.